Well, yeah. I guess that's about par for the course. Right, well, hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard, and this is Why Things Can't Be Easy, aka Lap of the World. Now, as you might imagine from that quick intro, we are going to be focusing today on replacing a battery terminal on my 1992 Acura NSX. She's nearly 30 years old at this point, and I will, by the time she turns 30, I will have over 300,000 miles on her if everything goes to plan. We are currently at 288,000 and some change, with a year and some change left to play. Given how I use the car, if you've watched any of the rest of my channel, I don't think that will be a problem, but we shall see with the state of the world what it is right now. Who knows? But before we get to actual work, we're going to be covering, so yes, the battery terminal replacement, and then one other very NSX-specific item, which is going to be touching up our battery retention bracket. These things are very simple pieces, but serve a very important purpose and can cause a lot of trouble if you don't look after them. And I'll explain that when we get that far, but we're going to be touching this guy up as well. Very simple process. If you catch it before it's too far gone, you can definitely save yourself a few bucks on that. So, without further ado though, let's jump into the battery terminal replacement first. Jumping right in, here's what we're going to need for the job today, having already removed the battery. Now you'll note, first of all, that the remains of the terminal that I took off the car, this was not a stock factory Acura terminal. I've replaced these once before. The terminals that when I bought the car, I'm not even sure they were original, but they were way corroded and were starting to cause connection issues. So I replaced those with these chain store kind of soft metal, quote-unquote lead terminals, probably 7 or 8 years ago. They're crap. I wouldn't recommend them, although they did last this long. Yeah, don't use those. They're kind of garbage. They're chunky and they don't package very well with the NSX battery situation the way it is. And I'll kind of explain that here in a little bit. Probably more when we get to redoing our battery bracket. It will make more sense in that context, I think. So what we have here, that is to say, I don't know if the original terminals on the NSX are soldered on or if they are crimped on. So this is kind of an OE crimp-on style aluminum terminal that I'll be using. That's what I'm going to be going back with. If yours are soldered on, you're going to need some kind of cutters to slice the wire as close as you can to the terminal before then trimming back the sheathing to use whatever kind of replacement you're going to. Now, to apply this ring terminal properly, it is a crimp style terminal, which means we need a crimping tool. That's kind of what I was saying when this is one of those jobs that seems fairly straightforward until you get to the point of actually trying to do it. And you'll realize that with the stuff that you're probably likely to have in a casual garage, I'll call it, you're not going to be able to get enough clamping force on this crimp to actually attach it to the size of wire, especially on the positive terminal in the NSX where we have two wires, two pretty thick wires. You're not going to be able to get the crimping force required to actually capture those permanently without a tool like this. Now I'll leave a link, affiliate link in the description below where I got these, and I will kind of review them once we're done here, and you can make a decision based on that. These are probably, I'm sure they're some kind of Chinesium, but they had good reviews and were very inexpensive. I think they were less than $30. So as long as they work once or twice, then I'm good with that quote-unquote investment. But with that said, we've already got the battery out of the car. We have already removed the old terminal because in my case, it was just as simple as undoing a bolt. So we're going to get right to the crimping bit here in fairly short order. Now, I will say, as I start, the worst part of this entire job is the amount of time you spend leaning over the front of your car. Be careful of hyperextending your knees and junk like that. But step one is going to be kind of consolidating these cables and then sliding your heat shrink tubing over both of them. So after some ado, you can see we now have both of the ends of the positive terminal wires fed through our shrink tubing there. So it's now time to apply the crimp or the crimp fitting to the end of those. and probably try and get as far as we can with maybe some single-handed large pliers, adjustable pliers, just to kind of get it seated, and then we'll go back with the actual crimping tools to finish the job. All right, so we've run into a little bit of a snag. I need to go over to the vise and probably open this up just a little bit further to be able to get it around both of them. But I think in the end we should get it to work. So having widened our crimp and gotten that started with the adjustable pliers, we're now going to go back with the actual crimping tools and see if we can get the crimp to actually clamp down on both of those heavy gauge wires. So that's not the prettiest one I've ever done, but it looks to be a solid enough crimp. Certainly I can't just reach down here and like pull this off with any amount of effort, just by hand. So it's probably fixed good enough. And we are going to then slide the heat shrink tubing over it and shrink the tubing, making sure we kind of cover the entire exposed area there. After some color-coded electrical tape just to be sure, because this is the positive terminal we're dealing with, in order to comply with various track tape providers' tech requirements and to prevent any accidental or sort of complete casual dropping stuff, bridging of the two terminals, we're going to apply a cover over the positive side. Now, if it is cold where you're working, I would definitely recommend making some efforts to warming up the the plasticky rubber, the typical terminal covers that you get to make it a little easier to slide on. Otherwise, you could probably also get away with just slitting it and taping it back together if you don't have the patience for the former. But we are now done with this until we go to put the battery back in. But before we put the battery back in, let's fix our battery tie-down bracket. So before we get to the process of actually reconditioning our battery tie-down bracket, let me cover a few things about why it's important to keep it in good condition, as well as a few other very important details about this piece of hardware. Now, the way this works is this fits over the front side of the battery, and then you have these J-hooks that hook onto the quote-unquote the battery tray, or kind of the floor such as it is of your frunk. So this end goes through the bracket, and this end hooks through the subframe in the car, thus clamping the battery in place against the back of the, against a kind of rear, there's not really a bulkhead there, but there's a rear stop. Now, two things that are very important here is you want to keep particularly the edge of this that comes to the nearest to the terminals in really good condition. From the factory, it has a rubber coating, but the rubber coating is widely known to fail. The other thing that's very important about this is it is not omnidirectional. This goes on one way or you start a fire. And I'm not even joking about that. So this is the way it's supposed to go on. You have a thicker section here, and then you have a little bit of a scallop over here near the positive terminal that kind of spaces this a little bit further away. If you put it on upside down, and I've taped over this, I'm wearing rubber gloves to avoid demonstrating this too thoroughly, then you end up with this situation, and you can see right here how close this gets to your positive terminal and how close this gets to your negative terminal. And if you slide this even a little bit one way or the other, you have the potential for contact, especially with one of these aftermarket lugs. I'm going to demonstrate this on the negative terminal if you don't mind. But if I put this thing on here and have it canted a certain way, and I have this on backwards, that right there, that is touching. If you do the same thing over here, you have a fire. I'll drop a link in the video description. My friend Josh from Clymers Carport, it's another YouTube channel, who has had some experience with an NSX. When he purchased his car, gorgeous yellow car, he actually had to deal with a some fire damage post-purchase. It was addressed in the deal and all that stuff. You can go watch his channel and find the whole story, but the short version is, because this was put on upside down, he had to replace the entire wiring harness from this to the back of the car, which is not a cheap proposition. That's also the reason that these big chain store chonker size battery terminals kind of suck. Because even if I have this thing on the correct orientation, flip this around, you really have to be careful to like clock this correctly, or it can touch on this side. This side's less of a concern, but still, you know, you don't have a lot of clearance to work with. And you can see here, even where it's been on, you know, on mine, where I've probably had it slid over here, where the, you know, mine was kind of angled in like this, where this has been rubbing, more as I take it on and off than in just actual use, because the battery really doesn't move. It does a pretty good job of tying the battery down, but so that's why you want to make sure this is on in the correct orientation. Make sure you have the right way up with the scallop here around the positive terminal. And then also you want to maintain the integrity of this rubber coating as much as you can. So that's what we're going to be doing next. So I'm going to whip out my, my wire brush and we'll get to work here. So as I start with kind of cleaning these things off, I will point out that you can just buy a new one from Acura for about $40. Not the most expensive part to replace, but you know, given how part supply chains have gone lately with Acura and Honda, you know, you can roll those dice if you want to, but you might want to keep your old one laying around just in case for future use if it is not too far gone. Mine just appears to have some surface corrosion on it, as you can see, so I'm just going to clean it off and recoat it a little bit. We'll get to the recoating part and material here in a bit. I suspect some of you already know where this is probably going. Oh, I will put this part has apparently, it has changed at least once in the life of the developmental life, such as it was of the original NSX. So I'll put the latest part number that is allegedly still available on the screen. So with my battery bracket now down to essentially bare metal, I'll let you guys in on a little secret. This is not the first time that I've done this. The first time I used the easy button and took this over to a friend's house where I was able to use a media blaster to get the original factory coating off as well as clean the metal up. And this time I caught it early enough that there's really no real deep corrosion on it this time. And that's good, because that means it's very easy to go back with our product of choice for this application. And yes, there is a non-juvenile factory-looking application for Plasti-Dip on your first generation NSX, and it is the rubberized coating on the battery bracket here. If you use this stuff correctly, it will make the inevitable need to do it again a lot easier. As you saw, I kind of scraped a little bit to get started, but after that, most of it I had put on thick enough to just peel up, after which a little bit of solvent did the trick to wipe the rest of it away, and we're back down to a fresh surface from which to start. So, I'm not going to make you guys watch me paint, but I will go ahead and I'm going to take this outside, because although Plasti-Dip is not as kind of, it doesn't float around and get on everything as much as paint does, but I'm still not going to use it in the same open space where I have a car parked that I care about. So I'm going to go take care of painting this, and I will come back to you with the results. And there you have it, folks. It's again not probably the prettiest Plasti-Dip job I've ever done, but it accomplishes what needs to be accomplished, which is having a full rubberized coating on this thing, or insulative coating on this thing. That will also hopefully prevent corrosion. I have achieved, as far as I can tell, I'm just looking a little closer just to make sure, I've achieved full coverage everywhere that I can see. And we have the, we'll have it, when we put it back on, we'll put it back on in the correct orientation. For now, I am going to hang this back up. It is, it is, whatever you want to call that. It is dry to the touch, but not fully cured. Right, now if I were a TV show or a Netflix special with a real budget, at this point I would be able to show you me putting the battery back in the car, strapping it down, and driving off into the sunset. Unfortunately, this is YouTube and, you know, not there yet. So, but that is an important point. If you take the Plasti-Dip route with refreshing your battery bracket, it's very important that you let the coating cure completely. I think it says 4 hours to be able to do it. I'm going to let mine cure at the very least overnight before I go and put it in a situation where it's having to deal with a lot of pressure or potential abrasion, you know, of me tightening bolts down on it or whatever the case may be, just to kind of maximize its longevity. And then, you know, but with that done, I should have, you know, several years before I have to fool with it again, which is the goal. You know, it was essentially a, you know, free to me repair. I used probably whatever, a few cents of brake clean and maybe $1 worth of Plasti-Dip out of the can that I already had. But, and we have you know, a refreshed refreshed battery bracket. So anyway, yeah, so this has been a fun aside, though. I am waiting on some parts to continue the hose and coolant job on the NSX. Once I finish with the hose and coolant, then I have a debate. This car is due for its timing belt and water pump, and I have people who are willing to work on that for me, or I could do it myself. If I take and have it done, there's been some parts chain issues there. I haven't been able to get a hold of the water pump, or rather the shops that I've been talking to. One of them is backed up because there have been part shortages and they've got like 5 cars in front of me. The other one could work me in pretty much anytime as far as I'm aware, but they haven't been able to find a water pump. Timing belt, no big deal. Valve cover gasket sets, no big deal. Water pump, unobtainium for some reason. I think I have some other channels I'm going to pursue there. So by the time this actually airs, I may have something on the way from wherever, but I think that's the direction I may take, is going and see if I can get third party and see what I can source or what I can, you know, haggle regionally. And then assuming I can find one, then I do have the debate of, do I do the work myself and save the money, but then I'm spending probably I would give myself 2 weeks, because this would be the first time that I'd be doing it. And inevitably, as with the hoses and some other stuff, there would be, you know, tools and small stuff that I wouldn't think about ahead of time, and other junk that I would need to do. You know, do I have the mechanical aptitude to tackle that? Sure. Do I have the experience, having never done it before, to plan ahead enough to make sure that I have everything to not take extra time just with shipping? I doubt it. So the balance there is spending more money but being able to get to signing up for track days probably sooner, or spending less money but pushing the off season further into the year, which I really don't want to do. You know, after 2020 having accomplished I mean, we got a lot done in 2020 for 2020, but there's a lot more I'd like to get done this year, if you know what I mean. So to push things along, I don't know. The debate will continue, but that's enough of that for today. If you made it this far into the video, you are a hero. I appreciate all your support. If you made it this far and you are not already subscribed, please click that button. And that way you will not miss any more of these mechanical shenanigans, and then especially once we're able to actually get back out in the world and check more tracks off of our list. But until that actually happens, and until the next video, I am Richard. This is Lap of the World, and I will see you then, if not at the track.